Where are the Washington Commanders most vulnerable? That plus a look at the Giants' passing game's evolution and more with special guest former NFL receiver Anthony Armstrong coming up next on the Locked On Giants podcast.
You are Locked On Giants, your daily New York Giants podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
This episode of the Locked On Giants podcast is brought to you by Prize Picks. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNFL and use the promo code LockedOnNFL for a first deposit match up to $100. That's prizepicks.com/LockedOnNFL for a first deposit match up to $100. Hello, New York Giant fans, and welcome to another edition of the Locked On Giants podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast family, your team every day. My name is Patricia Traina. Happy Friday to everybody. We made it to another week, and the New York Giants this weekend back home against the Washington Commanders, a team that they've had some success with over the years. And on today's program, we welcome in Anthony Armstrong. He is a former NFL wide receiver who played for Washington, I think, a couple of times. Also had stints with Miami, Jacksonville, Dallas, and Cleveland. And he is also the host of the BLEAV and Commanders podcast. So he is here to give us the lowdown on Washington. Anthony, great to see you again.
Yes, glad to be back, Patricia. Thanks for having me. It's good when it's Giants week. I liked playing the Giants back in my day, but recent history has definitely been on Big Blue's side as of late.
Yeah, for sure. And, Anthony, we got so much to talk about because some changes on Washington. The biggest one, obviously, Eric Bieniemy. What have you seen from his offense that's different, that fits this team better?
I think what he's brought initially going way back into the offseason was that he brought the accountability to the game. He brought the standard that he wanted the offense to operate at, and he made them raise their level of that. I mean, I know there were other reports that people were upset with how he was handling things, but that came and went, and I think they just had to get some bad news out on the team. But Eric Bieniemy's really uplifted this squad. And you think about it, the most important position, he's working with Sam Howell, who only has 7 career starts. He is learning as he is digesting this offense and going out there and executing it. So you're really getting to see a live hands-on example of how Eric Bieniemy would run a team, because frankly, this is his audition. He is showing how he can run this whole offense, and I think his impact on the offense will help that defense get better too. So this is big for him, but I think he's been doing a great job with personnel. He does a great job of moving people around and getting them in creative positions, and he has a lot to work with. There's a lot in the cupboard for Washington, and so I'm excited to see what he's able to do on this upcoming Sunday.
Is there a staple that you've noticed emerged from these first few games from Bieniemy?
I think we all know that he does favor the pass. He's an aggressive guy. He likes to get creative that way, and I've seen a lot of trips with the tight end barely bumped out on the backside. Has been something that they find their way to. But when you have 3 talented receivers like Terry McLaurin, Jahan Dotson, and Curtis Samuel, you're going to find ways to get those guys in some matchups against linebackers and maybe the cornerback 2, 3, 4 down the line. So that's one thing I see that's pretty common. But he does a good job of mixing things up. And recently they've been working that running game in there, and I think that's something that they really missed, is having a good power running game.
And you mentioned Sam Howell. He was a big question mark coming in for this Commanders team. A lot of people didn't know if he was the answer, if he could be the answer. I mean, what have you seen from him so far, and is he the answer?
I think he has a lot that you can work with. I really do. And he, like I said before, he only has 7 games. So everything you see is literally a work in progress. I mean, the defensive coordinators that have success against him, they give him confusing looks. They show one thing and then they roll out into something else, and that just delays his processing time. But the more that he sees these different things, the more reps that he gets, he's going to be able to go out there and operate a lot faster. The one thing I'm looking for him to do is just to take some next level throws, understanding his matchup, and regardless of what he sees outside of it being a completely bad situation, he's going to have to make some throws that maybe aren't on the schedule as the read should be happening in the play, but he has great accuracy. Patricia, he puts the ball right where you want it as a receiver. That way you can catch and run and have success with that. Ironically enough, the Commanders are near the bottom on the catch and run, the yak category right now, but that's not where they're going to stay forever. And there's a lot to build on with Sam Howell.
Where's he most vulnerable in his game? I guess, you're facing a Giants team that's known for bringing the heat.
Yeah.
No quarterback likes to be rushed or hit or anything like that. But where is Hal most vulnerable?
I think it would be just seeing the blitz and not recognizing all of these exotics. I mean, Wink Martindale has been a defensive coordinator in this NFL for God knows how long. He's been doing it for a very long time. He has a lot of tricks up his sleeve. When you go back to the preseason and they went up against Jim Schwartz in Cleveland, it was a similar vibe. You were able to put some heat on him, and you don't get to see those same exact looks. So he's just learning on the go. And I think if everybody is patient and understands that he is still learning, you can focus on some of those physical attributes and how he executes some things. Because I mean, I love the fact that he was able to stay calm and fight back against Denver. Right, they were down a lot against Denver. He drove that team back, made a big throw to Terry McLaurin. He was feisty and scrappy against Philly. Now the game against Chicago, I don't think that was necessarily a Sam Howell issue. That was more something with the defense, but Sam does a lot of good things. He has the confidence of his players behind him. The fans are behind him, and he goes out there and he's willing to work hard and put his body on the line to get the team win.
It all starts up front with the offensive line for any offense. And I know, the offensive line, like every other offensive line, it seems across the league, with very few exceptions, has had some issues. Charles Leno, obviously, the tragedy, losing, his unborn child, so best wishes to him and his wife, obviously. But what have you seen from that offensive line? What do you think is holding that offensive line back?
Man, they don't have the one player that you're just gonna know that you can circle, hey, that this position is covered, and now we can just focus on everything else. When you saw Trent Williams play, you just know that when 71's out there, he's gonna handle everything on this left side. Now you can slide away and you can handle the pressures and the blitzes that come from everybody else. You haven't had that so much with Washington. I do like the inside, the interior. I like Nick Gates, former Giant, Sam Cosmi. I like what they bring together. They seem to work pretty well. And Sadiq Charles is very athletic. He's still a little raw. He's still learning and improving, but you're having some issues out on the edge. And this is where Eric Bieniemy grows, is that he's going to have to allow a tight end to chip. He's going to have to allow a running back to chip to give those tackles a little bit of help. And they need to understand that they have this help as well. Knowing that you have some help on the outside, set a little bit more on the inside. Don't jump out and allow them to spin back underneath and get to your quarterback. So more reps together is always going to work, but the interior I like. The exterior has me a little bit worried.
I was just going to ask you about Nick Gates because he's probably one of my all-time favorite Giant
I
players.
like him.
He is a sweetheart off the field, but on the field, he's got that dog mentality.
Yes.
Can you talk about what he has brought to that offensive line and to the team in general?
Man, I tell you, Nick Gates, whenever there's a little bit of scuffle going on, you see a receiver and a DB or a linebacker talking, here comes that long hair and them tattoos. And I'm a type of guy where I love to see my linemen be the bullies for my offense. I want them to set the tone for what's going to happen. Like, no, you're not going to push around my receiver. No, you're not going to push around my quarterback. Like, we're not going to take that extracurricular stuff. We're here to defend them. And that attitude spreads across the field. I mean, everybody's going to get behind it. And I love to see that Nick came in and was able to set that tone and bring that type of attitude to the team.
Just as he was with the Giants. I mean, if there was a scuffle to be had, you knew he was in there. But it's amazing how nice of a guy he is off the field.
Oh yeah, he's the one guy. He's somebody I never met him personally, but I'm sure he's the one guy you want him always on your side.
Absolutely.
You always want him on your side. If you're going up against him, he might crack a pool stick across your head or something like that. But if you're on your team, man, he'll give you a good hug.
Well, do yourself a favor. Get to meet him. You will like him. Trust me. One of my all-time favorite, just a down to earth, tremendous human being, and I can't say enough good things about him.
I love it.
All right, Giant fans. Coming up next, we're going to talk about the Washington defense. Don't go anywhere. Hey, Giant fans, you never know when an unexpected illness is going to strike. You could be on vacation in another country or tucked miles away from civilization at a quiet island retreat. Well, now you don't need to be caught unprepared when you have Jase Medical's Jase Case. The Jase Case is a personalized emergency medication kit that contains 5 essential antibiotics that treat the most common and deadly bacterial infections. You can also customize your Jase Case by adding other medications based on your needs. To get your Jase Case, head to jasemedical.com to complete a medical intake form. And if warranted, one of their board-certified physicians will reach out to further discuss your specific needs. Once you're approved, Jase will handle everything from issuing the prescriptions to having the medication shipped straight to your door. And right now, you can save $20 off your Jase Case with the promo code LOCKEDON. Visit jasemedical.com. That's JASE medical.com to get started. And don't forget that promo code locked on to save $20 off your Jase Case. Hey, Giant fans, snap into NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $200 back in bonus bets guaranteed. The New York Giants are a 2.5-point underdog this weekend at home, but historically, the Giants have found a way to top their longtime division rival, Washington Commanders, which would mean if they do so again this weekend, they'll beat the spread. So this is just one of the many types of bets you can place with FanDuel. The app is easy to use, and you can bet on everything from spreads to player props and more, no matter what the sport. So visit FanDuel.com/lockdown and get started. FanDuel, official partner of the NFL. All right, Giant fans, welcome back to Locked On Giants. You got me, Patricia Cheney, your host, and I'm joined by former NFL receiver Anthony Armstrong. He used to play back in the day with the Washington franchise when it was known by a different name. He is now one of the co-hosts of the BLEAV and Commanders podcast. So he is here giving us his expert take on the Washington Commanders, whom, of course, the Giants face this weekend at MetLife Stadium. And Anthony, let's talk about the Commanders' defense, if we could. That defensive front continues to be, I think, the strength of the team. You know, they got Chase Young back. I mean, Montez Sweat is playing well. I mean, is there any weakness on that defensive front that you can see?
Man, the weakness just comes down to the fact that teams don't give them enough chances to get after the quarterback, right? I was just talking on my show that it seems as if the number one way to negate a great pass rush is to throw the ball quickly, run the ball and get the ball out of your hands quickly. Now, if you're doing that, you're not going to get a chance to see Chase Young get down the field. And with this defense is that they have to find a way to keep the Giants behind the sticks. If it's a 3rd and 5 and less, then you can't pin your ears back and know that it's going to be a pass play. You don't get to play to your strength. And in the recent weeks, you've seen teams take advantage of this Commanders defense in the passing game, and they find a way to get on a roll when they see the Commanders coming into town, and that's not a good thing to have. And I've been saying all week, when Atlanta traded for Van Jefferson, the meme on social media was, you're not even going to use this guy. You're trading for a receiver that you don't even throw the ball. And they went out there and tried to throw the ball all over the Commanders. So for me, I'm thinking that the Giants, Brian Daboll, Mike Kafka, that crew has to be thinking, we got a chance to throw the ball around. Negate this pass rush by throwing the ball quickly, run it with Saquon, hit some play action to Jalen Hyatt and crew. That's probably what the game plan would be if I was a Giant.
Makes sense, obviously, because you want to slow down that pass rush. Doesn't look like Daniel Jones is going to play this weekend, but still, the offensive line is an absolute mess for the Giants.
Yeah.
So that is not a very favorable matchup.
But you got it right. But you got Tyrod back there, and he's mobile. He can get out of trouble. And Washington's had trouble against mobile quarterbacks. I mean, they play. I feel like every week there's been a quarterback who's had some ability to run so far this season. Maybe Desmond Ridder may be the one that had the least amount. But I mean, you got, Daniel Jones can do it, obviously. You got Tyrod can do it. You've had Jalen Hurts, Justin Fields. It's all these quarterbacks that can get out. And it affects your pass rush lanes. You're not able to just tee off and win however you'd like to. You have to rush with control. You have to rush as one unit and set this net around Tyrod Taylor, because if he's able to get up and out, it's going to be a long day.
Yeah. So regardless, maybe that can mitigate the offensive line issues that they're having.
Yeah.
On the back end, Anthony, Emmanuel Forbes has struggled, and I believe he's been benched. What's gone wrong with him?
I think that he just has to learn. The NFL is, there's some guys who just show up and they're able to just take over day one. But he's learning, in my eyes, that you have to be that much more better than what you were. I mean, you set a record in the SEC, 6 pick sixes in your career. That's top-notch stuff. Now you get to the league and you realize you have to be a little bit quicker, one step faster, because the receivers are that much better. The quarterbacks are that much better. And if you miss by that much, they will take that sucker to the house. So right now it's just learning. I mean, I saw a rep against AJ Brown where he slipped on his transition and he still tried to go inside and break the ball up. You can't do that. That's a double negative. You've slipped already, so now you're not in phase with this receiver. Your next play is to go up and just tackle him, let him have a 10-yard gain, live to play another down. But if you're going to make those mistakes, Ron Rivera is not willing to risk losing games just to let you get more reps. So for Emmanuel Forbes, he's just going to have to get better, take better risks, get better at tackling. And he knows he can pick those passes off. He's just going to have to be in much better position with the receivers to do it.
Where do you think this Washington defense matches up best against the Giants offense?
Man, what a question. I mean, you mentioned the offensive line woes, and you would easily circle the defensive line should be the strong suit, but we already know play calling can negate that. So for me, I'm looking at this linebacking crew because Darren Waller is a guy that they brought into New York for a reason. He's a very athletic tight end, and just coming off a game against Kyle Pitts, who's a very athletic tight end, it makes some sense that you would try to find ways to get Waller open against guys like Jamin Davis, Cody Barton, and Kaliki Hudson. And there's going to be some safeties that are going to get some action as well. But that's the part that I'm most concerned about, because that same linebacking crew is going to have to try to stick with Saquon Barkley and then turn around and play pass coverage as well. So are there going to be intermediate routes open? Are you able to shut down Darren Waller and not let him make an impact on this game?
Now, again, I don't think Daniel Jones is going to play, but if it came down to Daniel or Tyrod, which of those two quarterbacks do you think would give Washington the biggest, headache, if you will?
Man, I mean, shoot, Daniel Jones has recent success against Washington. And now, for whatever reason, he does. I would say I'm a little bit more afraid of Tyrod just because he is more athletic and he's a wild card. You don't really know how he's going to read things. He's got 13 years of experience, but he's seen everything under the sun. Now, Daniel Jones, I personally think he's very systematic about how he does things. So if you watch his tape enough, you can determine where he's going to go with the football. So if you play the odds correctly with him, I think you can make yourself some plays. I think that's why some teams are having some success this year, because they've seen a year of Daniel Jones on tape. And now they're studying his tendencies. You haven't seen a year of Tyrod Taylor in this offense. So not knowing what you're going to get can actually be a huge detriment. So Tyrod would be the one that gives me a little bit more worry.
Yeah, but Tyrod played for Buffalo, not for Brian Dable per se, but Tyrod's been around. It's not like he's an unknown, entity.
He can play. I mean, he should have started in San Diego or with the Chargers, and then he had the issue where his lungs got collapsed by the doctor. So the guy can play. That's the thing. Like, it's not one of those ones where everybody's going to circle him as a franchise quarterback. Like, he can really get some things done for you. And between his athleticism, seeing the game differently, Saquon, there's a lot of weapons over there, and it could be a scary thing. I personally think this will be a shootout more so. I think it'll be a high-scoring game. I really do.
All right. Speaking of which, coming up next, we're going to talk about some X factors, some little known players that we should be paying attention to, and some final thoughts on the Giants Commanders game this Sunday, MetLife Stadium, 1 o'clock. Don't go anywhere. Hey, Giant fans, if you're looking for a fun and different way to play fantasy football this season, you need to check out Prize Picks. Just pick 2 or more players, predict their stats, and sit back and see how they perform. It takes less than 60 seconds to make an entry, and best of all, you can turn a few bucks into some nice cash with the right projections. Prize Picks is the #1 daily fantasy sports app, known for its quick withdrawals, easy gameplay, and wide selection of players and stat types. And they offer weekly promotions that can lead to big payouts, like Taco Tuesday, when each Tuesday, Prize Picks discounts select player projections up to 25% to give you even more value. So what are you waiting for? Go to prizepicks.com/lockedonnfl and use promo code LOCKEDONNFL for a first deposit match up to $100. That's prizepicks.com/lockedonnfl. And that promo code is Locked On NFL for your first deposit match up to $100. Prize Picks, daily fantasy sports made easy. Hey, Giant fans. So, between my work here on the Locked On Giants podcast, on Giants Country, and being on site to bring you all the latest and greatest Giants coverage, I just don't have the time some days to get to the grocery store to make sure that my fridge is full. Well, luckily, I don't have to thanks to DoorDash. With DoorDash, I get everything I want when I need it delivered straight to my door. For years, I've trusted DoorDash to also deliver freshly made meals from my favorite restaurants, and they've never let me down. And now that they've added grocery delivery to their offering, it's made my life so much easier. DoorDash has thousands of grocery stores to choose from, so you'll find one that's in your neighborhood that's right for you. And you'll get what you ordered, or they will make it right. And you can save on all your grocery and restaurant favorites with a no delivery fee on eligible orders with a Dash Pass membership. Now, for a limited time, you can get 50% off your first DoorDash order up to $20 when you use the promo code LOCKEDONNFL at checkout. That's 50% off up to $20, no minimum subtotal, and 0 delivery fees on your first order when you download the DoorDash app and enter the promo code LOCKEDONNFL at checkout. Terms apply. All right, everybody, welcome back to Locked On Giants. I'm Patricia Traynor, your host, joined by Anthony Armstrong, former NFL receiver, played once upon a time with the Washington franchise. He is now the host of the BLEAV in Commanders podcast, co-host, with Brian Murphy, I believe is your co-host.
Yes, sir.
And Anthony, I like to ask this question of guests who cover other teams. Who is the 1 or 2 players, and you can give me one on each side of the ball if you'd like, that we're not talking about a whole lot, but really should be talking about when it comes to this game on Sunday?
That is a really good question. I think offensively, the guy that I'm looking to make an impact for Washington on offense is Jahan Dotson. He hasn't had much action this season. He's not getting much love, and it's kind of odd, but I liken it to the fact that you have so many weapons on offense that you have to find a way to scheme some people in. Well, I think week 7 is the week that Jahan's going to get started. I mean, I know last year he had a long catch and run against the Giants. He's made some plays against this team, and it would make sense to me that Jahan would be a guy that shows up in this game and makes a lot of noise. He's not necessarily a lesser name, but he's had lesser production this season, which would make him be forgotten. But you can't forget about the guy wearing number 1 for the Commanders. And then on the defensive side, I'm not going to shop on that front line. I'm going to shop in the secondary because I think that you're going to have to pay attention to Cam Curl. Not much of a quiet guy, but he's the person that's going to keep this defense on lock. He's going to help them communicate. He's going to make sure people are in the right positions because you're getting some play from your cornerbacks. But when you have Derek Forrest out at safety, you got Danny Johnson coming in, you got some younger players. Cam Curl really has to be the rock for this defense. He makes sure the linebackers are correct. He's going to get the task of following Saquon and Darren Waller and God knows who else. He's going to be all over the place. So got to see what Cam Curl does, 31 in white.
A unit we don't talk about a whole lot on these shows, and we probably should talk a little bit more, special teams.
Mm-hmm.
Washington has a very, very good punter in Tress Way. They have pretty good special teams. I mean, The Giants, they've been better, the special teams, but they don't really have a guy right now who's gonna break it up wide open as a punt returner. That new kickoff return rule was kind of taking the pizzazz, if you will, out of that play. But
Absolutely.
that being said, when you look at the special teams matchups, who has the advantage and why?
Special teams is something that goes off momentum week to week. If you have a good game special teams wise, that rolls into the following week. The head coach kind of lets the special teams coordinator do a few more things, be a little bit more exciting. And I got to give the hat tip to Washington right at this moment. I know that on the field goal unit, with Joey Sly and crew, it can be a little inconsistent from time to time. But Chessway is one of the best in the league, and he's one of the best for a reason. And the biggest acquisition is getting Jamison Crowder back on this team. Now, there was a big question mark at the punt returner position, and when Jamison came available, Ron Rivera, they brought him in, and he paid dividends last week with a big return against the Falcons. And being able to have a punt returner with that capacity, with that capability, it makes your special teams coach think about some things. Do I want to kick it to him here? Do I want to kick it out of bounds? How do we handle these things? So I give the hat tip to Washington because you would like to think that Jameson would like to get some more action, especially spending the training camp with the Giants as well.
I was going to say he was with the Giants, and I thought they would maybe give him a look, and they didn't. And when they cut him, I was like, "Gosh, I hope that doesn't come back to haunt them."
Man,
And
it's tough. It's tough. It's tough when you see like veteran players that do have some value, and they can fit a very specific need. But there's a lot of people that make those decisions, and it's been to Washington's favor so far.
absolutely. Anthony, we often hear, this is more of a generic question, by the way, but we often hear about scheming receivers to get open, how the quarterback can help to get receivers open. Can you explain a little bit more about
Hmm.
that, what that entails, and how a quarterback or a scheme can help get a receiver open?
Yeah, well, shoot, you got to really put it all on play design and on the offensive coordinator for the most part because they're studying so much tape of their opponent that they're going to see how their opponent, the defense, is going to treat certain formations. And between the motions and shifts and just moving people and lining them up in various locations, you can get to something that you like, right? So if you know that if you're assuming that your best receiver is going to get matched up with the best cornerback in the league, you probably don't want to just line him up against that guy all game long. That's not the smartest thing to do. But if I can do some unique formations, maybe do some empty, put a running back outside, do some motions, this, that, and the other, now I'm going to force the defense's hand. They're going to play in some zone. They're going to play in something that's a little bit more favorable. That way I can get easy throws to my guys. One team that's great at this is West Phillips up there in Minnesota. They do a great job of getting Justin Jefferson wide open catches. Like they're not even crazy routes. They're just, hey, we're gonna scheme you up here, and then you run over there and turn around, and he's wide open, and everybody's like, how did he get so open? It's a lot of scheme, but he's a very talented player. I'm not discrediting him, but a lot of it is scheme, and you can really work that way into the offense.
Yeah, I mean, we talk about it here in New York all the time. How can they get these guys open? How can a quarterback help with that?
Yeah,
Obviously getting the ball out quick, making quick reads and that sort of
yeah.
thing, which, we haven't really seen on a consistent basis.
Yeah, I mean, I think now quarterbacks can help because I mentioned earlier Sam Howell making like next level throws. The throw against to Terry against Denver over like three people, that was the throw to where you're like, I really shouldn't throw this, but I trust my guy enough, and he's beat this other guy. Like a lot of factors makes him make that throw. Right now, when I mentioned Daniel Jones being predictable, like if he sees a coverage, he's going to throw it in that progression. He's going 1, 2, 3. Yeah, but I saw last year, there were a lot of times where they would play cover two and Daniel Jones would recognize cover two and just quickly get off and then throw it somewhere else. But there'd be somebody running wide open down the sideline. Next level throw is saying, I'm going to pump to the flat. Now I'm going to throw it over the top and gas y'all from running this coverage. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
So that's how you can scheme some people open. It's either coaching or the quarterback has to take a chance and make some things happen. But whenever you see it working, it's beautifully orchestrated. Whenever you just see how teams use it so well. I mean, look at San Francisco. They got players that can line up in multiple positions, and you never know. Debo's at running back, and then the fullback's in the slot. Then they shift. And then now the defense has to react differently to that. So there's so many games that can be played. It's just a big old game of chess. Choreographed chaos is what I call it.
Yeah, that's a very good way of putting it. All right, Anthony, final question for you. In this game, the New York Giants are a 2.5-point underdog, according to our friends over at FanDuel. What is the X factor in this game, do you think, and how do you see it tilting?
Man, the X factor is just going to be who is able to control the football, time of possession, and turnovers. If you turn the ball over, this could be a matchup to where you find yourself behind, and it gets you out of your normal game plan. I think Washington needs to be able to balance the run game a little bit better than they have been with the pass. But if they find themselves behind and they're once again going to be throwing the ball 50 times in a row, that is not a favorable place to be, because now you got Kayvon Thibodeau and crew really starting to hunt after your quarterback a little bit. So whatever team is able to control this clock and keep the ball in their possession, not give anything away, that's going to be the major factor there. Nothing too crazy, but it comes down to fundamentals a lot of times.
All right, great stuff, Anthony. He is Anthony Armstrong, former NFL receiver, played for Washington back in the day. He is the co-host of BLEAV in Commanders. So I want to thank you, Anthony, for coming on and spending a few minutes talking about the Commanders and football in general. It's always great to have a former player on and get his perspective on the game.
I appreciate you, Patricia. Thanks for having me.
All right, Giant fans, that's going to do it for us here on the Locked On Giants podcast. Be sure to tune in next week. We'll have a review of the Giants Commanders game. Hopefully it'll be a happy one. And of course, we will continue to bring you content all week long, 5 days a week, as we always do here on Locked On. For Anthony Armstrong, I'm Patricia Traina. Thank you again for tuning in, and we'll see you on Monday.